Did the Watchtower Society really predict the end of the world would happen in the year 2034 or prior to it? Well, to find out, let's look back at the Watchtower, December 15th, 2003. This is the December study edition of the 2003 Watchtower that would have been studied in January or early February of 2004. Found under the article, Our Watchfulness Takes on Greater Urgency. Now, I'm going to read most of this entire Watchtower article, but I'm going to get bored about halfway through, so we'll probably stop about there. But we're going to read the whole article and analyze it from beginning to the point I feel like stopping. Because after a certain point, this gets monotonous. So starting in paragraph 1. Above all other things, the 20th century was shaped by war, says author Bill Emmett. While admitting that all periods of human history have felt the weight of wars and violence, he adds, the 20th century did not differ in kind, it differed in degree. It was the first century to feature a truly world-spanning conflict, as if to emphasize the point, it featured not just one such worldwide conflict, but two. In other words, immediately, scare tactic and, oh wait, hold up, 1914 was World War I, so we're correct. Okay, moving on. Paragraph 2. You're going to find out from this whole article, it is one giant scare tactic. Number 2, wars. Wars involved nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom were foretold by Jesus Christ. However, they are just one aspect of the sign of Christ's presence and of the conclusion of the system of things. In this great prophecy, Jesus also mentioned famines, pestilences, and earthquakes. In many respects, such calamities have increased in scope and severity. Not true. Actually, what is true is the fact that we have more media around and more seismologists to be able to calculate what's going on, and then the reporters are able to report on it more often. And we've got worldwide media outlets that will report stuff that's happening in other countries. There is not actually an increase. There's no scientific evidence to show that there's an increase. And that's actually been debunked on several occasions. Going back to the article. The badness of man is abundant, as seen in his attitude towards God and fellow men. Moral breakdown and increase in crime and violence are evident. Actually, you know what's kind of funny is if we look at school shootings in general, school shootings have actually been down. One of the major claims was violent video games were the cause of a lot of these crimes happening in schools. And believe it or not, after a certain release known as Grand Theft Auto, school shootings actually went down. So, all those people that were ranting and raving against violence in video games, debunked. And them saying that crime has gotten worse, crime's actually at a decrease. Especially if you look at America, while we might hear about terrorism all the time on the news, crime rates have actually dropped. And it's actually the only thing that's on the increase is nonviolent drug offensive crimes. So mainly people having some pot in their pocket. So violent crime is actually dropping. But don't take my word for it. Look it up yourself. Men have become lovers of money rather than lovers of God, obsessed with pleasures. All this testifies that we are living in critical times. Paragraph 3. How do you view the worsening trend in human affairs? Many are indifferent, even callous, to distressing events of the day. The world's influential and intellectual men do not discern the meaning of the signs of the times. Rather, have religious leaders given proper guidance in the matter? Neither have religious leaders given proper guidance in this matter. But Jesus admonished his followers, keep on the watch. Therefore, because you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. Jesus here encourages us not only to be watchful, but to keep on the watch. To keep on the watch, we must remain alert and vigilant. This requires more than simply acknowledging that we are living in the last days, more than recognizing that times are hard. We must have firm conviction that the end of all things has drawn close. Only then will our watchfulness take on a sense of urgency. Hence, the question that we must reflect on is, what will help us to strengthen our conviction that the end is near? Oh yeah, they're laying it on thick. That's the one thing I'm going to say about this article is it's a bunch of scare tactics and they lay it on very, very thick. Consider the conditions prevailing during the time preceding a one-of-a-kind event in human history, the great deluge of Noah's day. People were so bad that Jehovah felt hurt in his heart. He declared, I am going to wipe men whom I have created off the surface of the ground. And he did just that. Drawing a parallel between then and now, Jesus said, just as the days of Noah were, so the presence of the Son of Man will be. In other words, Jehovah's Witnesses like to draw back events in the Bible and relate them to future events. Most commonly, Noah and then Armageddon. So, they're going to go deep in this whole Noah thing. So let's just keep going. Paragraph 6 for those following along. It is reasonable to assume that Jehovah feels about the present world as he felt about the pre-flood world, since he brought an end to the ungodly world of the issuance of this divine decree in 2490 BCE marked the beginning of the end for that ungodly world. Just think what that means for those then living. Only 120 years more, and Jehovah would bring the deluge of waters upon the earth to bring a ruin to all flesh, in which the force of life is active from under the heavens. Okay. Paragraph 10. Now, paragraph 9 and 10 are the big ones in this article. No, so paragraph 10. Oh, excuse me. Paragraph 7, I misspoke. I'm reading off my computer screen and it's terrible. So paragraph 7. Noah received the warning of the upcoming catastrophe decades in advance, and he wisely used the time to prepare for survival. After being given divine warning of things not yet beheld, says the Apostle Paul, Noah showed godly fear and constructed an ark for saving his household. What about us? Some 90 years have passed since the last days of this system of things began, and the knowledge of God will remain forever, states the Bible. Now is therefore the time to do Jehovah's will, and with a keen sense of urgency. So remember what they're doing here. They're likening our day to Noah's day. And now they said that the destruction of the world back then would happen 120 years from the decree that Jehovah gave. What they are now saying is 90 years have passed since 1914. But in 30 more years, which would put it at 2034, basically what they are doing, instead of a 70 or 80 year generation, this is the forgotten generation teaching that states that the generation is 120 years. So, moving on to paragraph 8. And we're going to just go through till this subheading and read a little bit of the next subheading, and then I'm gonna end it right there just because this video is going to go on for way too long. In modern times, sincere students of the Bible have learned from the inspired scriptures that this system is doomed for destruction. Do we believe this? Jesus said that he would come as God's appointed judge and would separate people as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. Those found unworthy would depart into everlasting cutoff, but the righteous ones into everlasting life. Jehovah kept these warnings in front of his people by means of timely reminders through the spiritual food provided by the faithful and discreet slave. And of course they reference Matthew 24, 45 through 47, not referencing the whole thing. And I love how every time they say faithful and discreet slave, they always reference that little upon to fear God and give him glory, because the hour of judgment by him has arrived. An integral part of the kingdom message preached earthwide by Jehovah's Witnesses is the warning that God's kingdom will soon remove human rulership. By the way, if you ever ask a witness what the good news of the kingdom, what the good news is, it's not about Jesus. It's about God's going to go and kill everybody and set up his own government of the paradise earth. That is the good news. The good news is everybody dies except for a select few. So that's good news, everybody. Moving on. On thick that the 90 years and 120 years hold true in our day. They're laying it on thick. Okay. Next subheading. And I'll read through this until I get to the next subheading, and then I'll just read what the subheadings are after that. We'll end from there. Sexual depravity becomes rampant. Paragraph 11. Our time corresponds to Noah's day in another respect. Jehovah had commanded the first man and woman to fill the earth with their kind, humanity with unnatural sex. They came down to earth, materialized bodies, and cohabitated with beautiful women, producing offspring that were half human, half demon, the Nephilim. The sin of these lustful angels is likened to the perversions of Sodom and Gomorrah. Consequently, sexual depravity was widespread in these days. What about the moral climate of today? In these final days, the lives of many revolve around sex. Paul graphically describes such ones as having pornography, premarital sex, sexual abuse of children, and homosexuality are commonplace. Some have already received themselves the full recompense in the form of sexually transmitted disease, breakdown of family life, and other social ills. The breakdown of family life is in, they're not really focusing in here on adultery. They're more so focusing in on probably because some kid had sex and the parents decided to shun them. That family breakdown because of we must never lose sight of the fact that these days are truly just as the days of Noah were. In other words, 120 years, 2034. The upcoming Great Tribulation will clear the earth of fornicators, adulterers, men kept for unnatural purposes, and men who lie with men. How urgent is it that we cultivate hatred for what is bad and stay clear of circumstances that could lead to immorality? Alright, so the next subheading, the earth becomes filled with violence. So it goes on to talk about how the world is so violent today, and how it was violent once again. Hey, gloom and doom, bunch of scare tactics. Wait, hold up, we've got to give you our selling point, us. So we're the only ones going out and preaching. And the final part of only a few will survive. In other words, once again, scare tactic, remember, you have to serve us. Then the final subheading, keep on the watch. And then we'll go ahead and we'll read this final last two paragraphs here. Although the flood seems remote from our day, it clearly provides a warning that we must not ignore. The similarities between Noah's day and our judgment upon the wicked. Today, Jesus Christ is directing a tremendous spiritual building work for the security and survival of true worshipers. An ark-like spiritual paradise exists. To be preserved from the great tribulation, we must remain in that paradise. Surrounding the domain of the spiritual paradise is Satan's world, ready to assimilate any who have become spiritually drowsy. It is imperative that we keep on the watch and prove ourselves ready for Jehovah's day. And thus ends the watchtower of December 15th, 2000. Despite laying it on super, super, super thick in this entire article, the answer is no. No, they didn't. Because they got the workaround. They never specifically came on out and said, yes, the end of the world will be then. They threw their few caveats in there as no one knew the day nor the hour. But what was this article? This article was testing the water. See, the 70-year generation of 1984 passed. The 80-year generation of 1994 passed. And pretty much a lot of people. This was in essence coming out with new light of, well, not even coming out with new light, but testing the new light of the year 2034, the 120-year generation. In other words, it will happen before the year 2034. We just have to wait a little while longer. They tested the water. Nobody really picked up on this. I never really heard a lot about it at the meetings or at the hall. So it pretty much got dropped into the overlapping generation. Now, despite how much we all make fun of the overlapping generation and how sad, because everybody living now that is an adult, oh my God, it will happen in my lifetime. It's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. I'm part of that overlapping generation, so it could happen in my lifetime. If it doesn't, it'll be just a few years afterwards, and it's definitely gonna happen in my kids' time. So what winds up happening is they go about doing the same thing that we heard our whole entire life. The end is near, the end is near, the end is near. And they get to indoctrinate these young children so that their children remain witnesses. And Watchtower can grow through the children that grow up to become adults, and they stay on in because they keep hearing generation teaching. They can slowly start moving away from that generation teaching because they bought themselves an extra 80-something years from doing that teaching. So in essence, the overlapping generation teaching allowed them to expand so much time.
Captain's log. Stardate, January 1st, 2904. We received a transmission across space from an unknown galaxy. Mr. Spock, please prepare to intercept. Video message. What do you make of it, Mr. Spock?
The governing body wishes to thank you for tuning in to the JW.org January 2904 broadcast. We have received some new light from Jehovah regarding the end times, as it brings out in Revelation. This system of things will end, and there will be a new heavens and a new earth, following the 1,000-year reign of Christ Jesus. As we all know, this 1,000-year generation of Christ Jesus' rule won't last much longer. We have but 10 years left. Clearly we know this is the time not heard of before throughout the galaxy. But the governing body is here because we need your help to spread this news throughout the galaxy. We need your donations to finish our plans on our new Bethel Star, which will spread order throughout the galaxy before Christ.
What do you make of it, Mr. Spock?
You heard the mathematics of it. To me, it is quite illogical.
And as always, the governing body wishes to tell you to stay alive till 2914?